Hi everyone! In this video, we're going to discuss on how to accomplish the annual medical report form. Now, the annual medical report should be submitted to the Department of Labor and Employment on or before the last day of March following the covered period. For example, for year 2021, for last year, your AMR should be submitted on the last day of March 2022. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to walk you through on how to accomplish the form. So very simple lang naman yung mga steps natin in accomplishing the form. So this form is called the DOLE/BWC/HSD/OH-47-8. Okay, so here, if you do not have the form yet, kung wala pa kayong form, you can download it from the Bureau of Working Conditions na website, or you can download it also from the different Department of Labor and Employment na website. So meron silang mga downloadable forms. So nandun po yung mga forms natin for the occupational safety and health reports na kailangan natin isubmit sa Department of Labor and Employment. Okay, so let's start and accomplish this form. Annual medical report form for period January 1, 2021 to December 31, 2021. Okay, so here we are going to, 2021. Okay, so yan, masyado malaki. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so this particular report is for year 2021. Next is you're going to write here, of course, the name of establishment. So pangalan ng company nyo, for example, your company is called the ABC Company. Okay, so it's the address of your company. For example, it is located in Tipolo, Mandaue. You can give the complete address of your company. Okay, then we also have the number 3, the name of manager or the owner. So here you have to write down what is the name of the manager or the owner of your company. So like, for example, let's say it's Juan de la Cruz. Okay, so let's move this a little higher. So your manager is Juan de la Cruz. So Juan there. Okay, so Juan de la Cruz. Then for number 4, the nature of business and product or service. So we have here, for example, the nature of business is construction. Okay, so if you are in a construction company, number 5 is the total number of employees. So how many workers do you have? So this, regardless the status of the workers, or if they are not yet regular, probationary, they should be included. Okay, so total number of workers, for example, you have 100 workers. So you write down 100 workers. Then here, how many shifts? The number of shifts you have, meaning to say operational yung workplace ninyo, your operation is, for example, how many shifts? 2 shifts, 3 shifts, or 1 shift only. For example, this construction industry, the ABC company is working 24 hours a day kasi construction, nagmamadali. Okay, for example, so lagyan natin dito 3 shifts. So item number 6, for your 3 shifts, kung 3 shifts po tayo, so you have to write down here for item number 6, the number of, or the number distribution of employees as to nature, workplace, sex, and work shift. For example, sa office, in the office, how many male workers are there? So meron tayong, for example, you have 10 workers working in the office. Then we also have how many female workers working in the office. So you have 10 female also. Then you're going to add this for the total, that will be 10 plus 10 will give you 20, of course. Then next is we have for your first shift. So those non-office, so meaning to say you don't nagtatrabaho, for example, in production area or in the workshop areas, so other than office. So here, how many workers? For example, on the first shift, you have 20 male workers. Then on the second shift, you have also 20 female workers. So that will give us a total of 40 workers for your first shift. Now, if we're going to move on here, that will be the number of workers on the second shift. For example, on the second shift, we have 10 workers. Okay, 10 male workers Then we also have 10 female workers. Then that will give us a total of 20 workers. Okay, so 20 workers. So now that we have 20 plus 40, that will give us 60. And we also have 20 workers on the second shift, meaning to say that's already 80. So we still lack 20 workers. Okay, so para makompleto yung 100 workers to be accounted for, lahat yung sinabi natin na 100 workers. So here we have on the third shift, we have 10 workers, male workers. Then on the second shift, third shift for female workers, we have another 10 workers, giving us again a total of 20 workers working on the third shift. So that's it. These are the number of workers or employees in your workplace. Now let's proceed with item number 7. So item number 7, the question is preventive occupational services, check or cross. Okay, so you can put a check or you can put a cross. So occupational health services is organized or provided by. So this is actually a requirement under Rule 1960 for occupational health services. You can read Rule 1960 for the details kung ano ba yung mga requirements natin for your occupational health services. So for example, here, the occupational health services is being provided by your establishment or by your company. So you just have to put a check here. Okay. Then next is we have, let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay. Then next is we have B. So item B, occupational health services as described under number 7A above, is organized or provided as a service. So yung occupational health services ninyo, is it provided solely for the workers of the establishment or of that particular company? Or is it provided for a common number of establishments? For example, in mall, di ba? Sa mga mall, marami mga concessionaires, you have different locators. So is this particular occupational health services provided solely for your company? Or even in construction industries, di ba? If you have the principal owner, okay, so principal owner of the construction, so meron tayong mga contractors and subcontractors and they are working on the same location. So the same premises yung trabaho nila. So there are times that the principal provides the occupational health services. But in here, for example, your occupational health services is being provided solely for the workers of your company. So let's put a check here. Then next we have for item C, the employer engages the services of the following. So meron ba tayong occupational health practitioner? So you might be wondering, bakit kailangan ng occupational health practitioner? Of course, this has been superseded already, okay, because of the Republic Act 11058 and its implementing rules and regulations, the Dole Department Order 198 series of 2018. Doon po sa new order natin, sa DO 198, wala na pong requirement for occupational health practitioner. Only ang nakalagay doon is for the occupational health personnel, either you should have your first aider, occupational health nurse, occupational dentist, or occupational health physician. But if you happen to read Rule 1960, meron pa din po doon nakalagay na duties and functions of occupational health practitioners. So here, example, do not have occupational health practitioner, say that's not mandatory anymore. We'll move on with occupational health physician. So here you have to put a check because we have 100 workers and it is construction industry. Di ba kapag construction industry, potentially or usually they are considered as high-risk workplace. Okay? So yun, i-check natin. Check na lang muna natin lahat. So we'll check, meron tayong dentist. We also have occupational health nurse and yun. So we have to write down the name. So you have to put the name of our OH physician. For example, you have Juana de la Cruz. Okay, so Juana de la Cruz is our OH physician. Then address, for example, the same address as the company. Perhaps they live near the company area. Okay, so that it will be easy for me to type. Okay, so Tipolo, Mandaue City, for example. Then we have our occupational health dentist. So our dentist, for example, is Jean de la Cruz. Okay, I have here Jean de la Cruz. And Jean de la Cruz is also living in Tipolo. So that's the address of Jean. Tipolo, Mandaue City. Okay, so Tipolo. Then next is we have your occupational health nurse. So for example, occupational health nurse, you have Lynn, okay, Lynn Sanchez, for example. Okay. Okay, I'm just creating names, huh? Okay, so here the address of Lynn, for example, the same. Lynn is living in Tipolo. Okay, Tipolo, Mandaue City. Example. That's it. Then D, let's proceed with D. The occupational health physician, practitioner, nurse, or personnel conducts an inspection of the workplace, because one of the function of the occupational health personnel is also to conduct survey. Okay, so they have to conduct inspection, okay, health inspections in the workplace. So here, the frequency, how often do they conduct the inspection in the workplace? So example, we're doing it once a month. Okay, so once a month lang yung ginagawa natin na inspection. This is for your health, okay, for the occupational health personnel only. Then item number 8, so we move on with emergency occupational health services. So for your emergency occupational health services, A, the employer provides a treatment room, medical clinic in the workplace with medicines and facilities. So remember, there is a specific requirement depending on the number of workers, kung ilang ba yung workers meron sa workplace ninyo. And of course, the risk classification. So it will be low risk, medium risk, or high risk yung workplace ninyo. So that varies. Depende po kung ilang workers din yung ang isang workplace. So tignan nyo na lang po yung Department Order 198 series of 2018 para malaman nyo po kung ano yung requirement sa inyo when it comes to this particular requirement. So, for example, here, of course, we have, because we have 100 workers and construction is a high-risk workplace. So, ito dito. So, if you have, you check it, you put a check here. So, perhaps you can write down also what is being provided. So, if you have, okay, so you can write it here. So, perhaps you can write, if you have a clinic, okay, so you have a clinic or, okay, you can write it here, or you can even leave it blank. Okay. Or others, for this one, for others, meron kasi iba pag masyadong marami na yung workers nila, instead of the requirement of having a clinic with a certain number of beds, so ang required sa kanila is already a hospital. So there are some cases like that. Kung masyadong marami na yung mga workers, so nag-increase din yung, nag-iba din yung requirement. Okay, so that's it for number 8. Then we have to proceed with letter B. Okay, so item B, schedule of attendance in the workplace. So ano yung schedule ng occupational health physicians natin, occupational health dentist, occupational health practitioner. So considering all these OH personnel natin, they're working on a full-time. Okay, so full-time yung work nila. Okay, for example, the physician works 8 hours a day. Okay, so 8 hours per day. Then the physician, the dentist is working also 8 hours per day. You have to check with the requirement kasi doon nababase yung kung ilang hours pa dapat yung occupational health person magtatrabaho. Okay, so dapat nasa work site siya. You have to check the standard for that, or the DO 198 series of 2018. Okay, for example, ito example lang to ha. So if you have your OSH practitioner, so wala tayong OSH practitioner, OH practitioner, then we have here for occupational health nurse, lagyan natin working also 8 hours. So dito, ano yung work shift ng OH personnel natin? Your position, what is the work shift? For example, he's working on the first shift. Okay, so first shift. Then your dentist is scheduled to work on the second shift. Okay. And your nurse is scheduled to work on the first shift, for example, the same as the doctor. So that's it. Then we move on with item C. So letter C is schedule of attendance of full-time first aider. Of course, you are required to have also first aiders. So the number of first aider required in your workplace depends also on the number of workers you have and the risk classification of your workplace. For example, here we have lots of first aiders because we have 100 workers. So for example, in all shift, we have first aiders in all shift. Okay, so that's it. We have first aider on first shift, first aider on the second and the third shift. Let's move on with item D. The following occupational health personnel of this establishment have undergone training in occupational health and safety or first aid training. So here, because a doctor cannot be called as an occupational health physician if he does not have the mandatory training. Same thing with dentist and the occupational health nurse. So here I'm going to put a check. Perhaps we are all compliant with this. They have the mandatory trainings. Okay, so meron silang trainings there. Now let's move on with item number 9. So for item number 9, you have here, sorry for that, I have so many mails. Okay. Okay, so item number 9, occupational health services. So A, occupational health personnel of this establishment conducts regular appraisal of the sanitation system in the workplace. So dapat nagkakatag din po sila. Okay, so because they have to make sure na wala tayong mga biological hazards in our workplaces. So you have to make sure that proper sanitation is being implemented in your workplace. B, number of workers who underwent the following medical examination. So if you are going to read also Rule 1960, there are different examinations that should be conducted. And that should be free of charge. Libre po sa workers natin ang mga examinations. So here we have under item B, 1 to 6, di ba? Replacement examination, periodic examination. So usually the periodic examination is annually. Then we also have here return to work. So for your return to work, usually ito yon after an injury or illness, nag-absent si worker for how many days. So before worker can go back to his established job, he must or she must undergo the examinations as required. Okay, so kung ano yung kailangan na examination para sa kanya prior to his return to work. So dapat meron tayong examination. And of course, transfer. Your transfer examination, ito naman yung kapag nag-transfer si worker from one area to the other. For example, from office, dati si worker is assigned at the office, then he will be transferred in production area. So there is a change in the working environment, different hazards. So we will check also kung yung worker natin, yung health condition niya ba ay pwede siya doon sa production area. So we have to consider lalo na yung mga production or yung mga areas may exposure to different hazards. So we have to determine also the condition of the worker. So yan, transfer examination. Then we have, this is actually spatial. Okay, that's literally spatial examination and like for example, yung mga exposure to lead. For example, meron tayong mga other special examination na ginagawa sa mga workers natin. And we also have number 6, separation. So one of the mandatory examinations also if the worker separates from his employer. So nag-resign or if not was terminated. Okay, so my separation of employment yung nangyayari. So it is also mandated the worker should undergo examination for that. So dito, ilalagay nyo lang, i-check natin. Okay, so for example, hindi tayo nag-hire ng new workers, walang new worker for 2021 dahil pandemic, for example. So meaning to say, walang worker na nag-undergo ng pre-placement examination because we did not hire new workers. So walang bagong workers. So dito na lang tayo. So nagkaroon tayo ng periodic examination. periodic physical examination. Then example, merong worker, dalawang worker for example na nagkaroon ng sorry, I put a check, sorry for that. So, okay. So here I'm going to write the number of workers. Just a moment, okay? Okay, for example, here, ilang workers? Because the question is, how many workers na nag-undergo? I'm going to erase this one. Okay, so here, the number of workers, ilang workers nag-undergo ng periodic examination. So it is required that all of the workers should undergo, diba? Okay, so you have to write down 100 there. Then next is return to work. Like I mentioned, nag-example ako, meron tayong dalawang example worker na nagkaroon ng disabling injury, hindi nakabalik agad sa trabaho. So meron tayong dalawang workers na kailangan mag-undergo ng return to work. So then, na-transfer, so taking into consideration, wala tayong worker na na-transfer from one area to the other, so that will be 0. You can leave it blank or you can put 0 for this, okay? So, pwede naman kahit 0, ilagay nyo 0 or leave it blank. Understandable na yun. Then, example, meron pong, kung meron nag-resign, okay, so you have to write it down. So, in this particular scenario natin, walang nag-transfer, walang special examination, or lagyan natin may special examinations. For example, may mga welders tayo. Okay, so meron kaming 10 welders that have undergone special examination, for example. I'll just erase this one para hindi. Okay, yes. Okay. Okay, so for example, meron tayong 10 workers na nagkaroon ng special examination, walang self-financial examination. So here we have ilang workers na nag-undergo ng chest x-ray, so same, for example. So ito dito sa return to work, for example, hindi nag-chest x-ray, so no need to write, so 0. Okay, so dito for special examination, for example, din chest x-ray, okay, so sila. So next, urinalysis. So ilang worker, okay, nag-test for urinalysis, lagyan natin 100. So for example, return to work, parang urinalysis na na-require. Then here, wala din, for example. So yan, example lang po yan. So yan yung ano natin. So next is we have here for your other examinations, you have stool. For example, ilang workers. So sabi natin, hindi tayo nag-hire ng new worker. So therefore, walang worker na nag-undergo sa pre-placement examination. But of course, this is mandatory for our periodic, for our existing workers. Example, 100 workers took stool exam. Then 100 workers din nag-undergo ng blood test. For example, ECG, walang workers nag-undergo ng ECG, others kung meron. Then return to work, for example, ilan ba nag-stool examination for return to work, blood test, ECG. Okay, lagyan natin wala, for example. So other than that, wala nang ano. So leave. You can put, like I said, you can put 0 or you can leave it blank. Next is we have number 10. Report of diseases. So report of diseases, a number of consultations or treatments for the following diseases. So eto, di ba, one of the function of your occupational health personnel is they have to maintain a record. So dapat meron silang record sa lahat ng mga illnesses, sa lahat ng mga complaints ng mga workers natin and mga diseases that has contracted by the worker. So yun, dapat meron tayong record. So doon sa record natin for the year 2021, doon po natin makukuha ang information na ilalagay natin dito sa form natin dito. Sa form natin ito, okay, sa report natin. So here, if you can see, ilang workers ba nagkaroon ng skin allergy. For example, may worker tayo nagkaroon ng skin allergy, for example. So you have to write down here the next column. So it says how many males, Okay, ilang male worker ang nag-contract of that particular illness or disease at ilang female din ang nag-contract ng illness. Then you just have to sum up the total number of cases for this particular complaint or illness or disease. So for example, we have 10 workers. Okay, so 10 workers, then 10 male workers, I mean. Then here we also have 10 female workers. So here on this particular column is the total number of cases. So for our total number of cases, that is 10 male workers plus 10 female workers who have contracted allergies. Then that will give us a total number of 20 cases. Okay, so 20 cases pa tayo. So the rest, I'm not going to read all these illnesses listed here. So you just have to check kung alin ba dito sa mga illnesses na ito ang nagkaroon ng mga workers ninyo. So you refer to your record. Okay, that will be the basis for you here. So for example, another dito sa head. So meron ba tayong mga workers na nagkaroon ng tension headache, for example? So considering, for example, they're working, okay, overtime, or if not exposed sa mainit na lugar, lalo na sa construction, exposed sa different chemicals that could possibly lead to this complaint. So lagyan natin, for example, nagkaroon po tayo ng five male workers and no female workers. Okay, so total is 5. Okay, so that's it. Then for your eyes, okay, so sino mga workers nagkaroon ng problema sa mata? Okay, so error of refraction, okay, bacterial or viral conjunctivitis, cataract, others. So you just have to you check here and you put the number of male workers that have contracted this particular illness, the number of female workers, and you have to sum up to give the total number of cases for that particular illness. So next is we have for your mouth and the ears, nose, and throat. So dito, so same thing, you just have to put a check kung meron nagkaroon ng ganitong sakit. So ilang male workers, ilang female workers nagkaroon ng ganitong sakit, and you have to add the total cases. Okay, so sum up. You add the number of cases for the male workers plus the cases for female workers. That will give you the total cases. Then of course, respiratory, for example, meron tayong mga problema sa bronchitis and other respiratory illnesses. So the same, you just have to write down here yung mga illnesses na nagkaroon na ang mga workers sa workplace ninyo. Heart and blood vessel. Then we also have gastrointestinal, okay, genital, urinary, okay, reproductive. Okay, minsan mahirap pronounce yung mga illnesses, okay? Then moving on, we have here for your neuromuscular or skeletal joints. So kung mayroon mga nagkaroon ng mga ganyang complaints, arthritis, the same method lang po. So you have to write down the number of workers who have contracted this illness. Eh, kung wala, again, you can put 0 or you can leave it blank. Then infectious diseases, kung mayroon mga infectious diseases. So here others, for example, no, pwede nyo lagyan dyan yung mga, for example, nagkaroon ng COVID-19. Pwede po. Kasi wala pa si COVID-19 sa form na ito. Okay, so hindi pa na-revise. So since marami po mga workers, may mga workers po na nag-contract ng COVID-19, nagkaroon ng COVID-19, so pwede po natin yan ilagay dito sa others. Okay? Then diseases due to physical environment. So diseases due to physical environment such as the following. So due to noise and vibration, so mayroon nagkaroon ng noise-induced hearing loss. Okay, so nabungol yung workers. So ilan yung male workers, ilang female workers na nagkaroon ng deafness. Then dito, ilan yung total workers na nakaroon ng deafness. Then dito, diseases due to temperature and humidity abnormalities or hot temperature. So dito, di ba sa construction, most of them are exposed to hot environment because some of them are working under the heat of the sun. So most likely may mga workers tayo na nagkaroon ng complaint on this particular area. Okay? So you just have to put ilan ang nagkaroon ng ganyang problema. Okay? So cold temperature, dito, ano yung mga, kung meron naman exposure to a very cold environment, yun, pwede lagay dito. Letter C, diseases due to pressure abnormalities. So ito, kung may exposure kayo sa pressure, such as if you're working underwater or tunneling, yan yung mga worker na usually exposed to pressure, but in an open construction, so usually they are not exposed to pressure. Now let's move on with item 16. So item 16, hazards in the workplace. So please check and give details of the substance. So dito, yun na-itemize dito yung mga different hazards that might be present in your workplace or that are present in your workplace, you have to identify, and the substance or the sources. So ano ba yung substance that created or produced this particular hazard or the source? Saan ang galing? For example, do you have chemical hazards? Ito chemical hazards, example, dust, such as silica dust. Of course, i-check natin dito because exposed talaga yung mga construction worker natin in silica dust. For example, saan ba nanggaling yung silica dust natin? Lagyan natin, for example, construction materials. Okay? So, pwede natin lagyan ng construction materials. Or you can also be very specific here. Okay? So, in my case, I'll just put on construction materials. So, construction materials. And you have to put here the number of workers exposed. For example, how many workers are exposed to dust? For example, lagyan natin dito, it's around 60 workers, those working in the field. Okay, so 60 workers exposed. Ito, combined na po ito, male and female workers. For example, do you have chemicals in the form of liquid? Example, wala tayong chemicals in the form of liquid na ginamit during the year. So here, do you have chemicals in the forms of mist, fumes, or vapor? So example, lagyan natin ng check, may mga welders tayo and exposed tayo. For example, yung, as example dito, mist from paint spraying or spray painting. Okay, so here, pwede nyo lagyan yan. So kung chinek natin, for example, yung source natin, paints. Okay, so kung pwede natin yung paints natin dito. Okay, so if you have other like thinners, okay, so in construction they're using, okay, thinners. Okay. So, and others, you can name it here. Then how many workers, for example, we have 10 workers exposed to this particular condition or to this hazard. Then we also have gases. Do you have exposure to gases? Do you have this hazard in your workplace? Example. Okay, so I'm not going to put example on all of this, okay? Okay, so let's proceed. So here, letter B is for your physical hazards. So what are the different physical hazards that you have also in your workplace? Alam naman natin, kapag construction, meron talaga tayong source of noise. So lagyan natin, meron tayong mga, for example, sa source of noise natin, jackhammer, for example. So meron tayong, or for example, lagyan na lang natin drillers. Okay, so compactors. Okay, compactors. Yon, example. And so many others. Okay, so write down natin. So for example, meron tayo dito 10 workers. For example, yung nagtatrabaho in the vicinity of these particular sources. Okay, so, or if not in the vicinity, they are the operators. Now, next, exposure to temperature, humidity, especially for those working under the heat of the sun, or meron tayong other mga processes that generates heat. Then here, pressure. So most likely hindi sila exposed to pressure. Illumination. So ilang workers exposed to illumination. Usually this is we are referring to inadequate illumination, or it could be also excessive illumination. Then radiation. So here, pwede kayo maglagay ng radiation coming from the sun if the worker is working under the heat of the sun. Vibration. So of course, yung mga drivers natin sa mga heavy equipments, okay, or if not, yung mga operators or mga workers that uses hand tools or powered hand tools that vibrates. So that will be the source of vibration. So you just have to check here, okay? So, and you put the sources here or the substance itself, then the number of workers exposed, okay? So next, we move on to item C for your biological hazards. So, ano yung mga biological hazards na meron sa workplace ninyo? Do you have viral or viruses? You have bacterial, fungal, parasitic, and others. Okay, so you just have to check, you analyze the condition of your workplace, you identify kung ano ba yung mga merong mga, kasi it varies from one workplace to the other, depende kung saan location, even in construction. If the location of your construction is within the vicinity of a landfill, so malapit lang sa landfill, so that will increase the risk of having this particular hazards, the biological hazards, or if not, you do not have proper disposal of your waste, you do not have restrooms or other facilities. So that varies from one work site to the other. Ergonomic stresses, okay, so or ergonomic hazards, exhausting physical work, prolonged standing. So sino mga workers exposed to prolonged standing? Are the workers also exposed to nagkaroon ng mga low back pain, unfavorable work posture, static or monotonous work, yung mga repetitive movements in awkward posture, and others. So specify kung ano yung others. Okay, so you just have to put a check and you put the source, and you have to write down here the number of workers exposed. Okay, so that's it. That's the end in filling up the form. Okay, submitted by. So here, di ba sabi natin, it is the responsibility of the occupational health physician. Kung wala si occupational health physician, so pwede po si occupational health nurse, or pwede si occupational dentist, or pwede din of course our first aider kung hindi naman required sa inyo magkaroon ng occupational physician and dentist. But of course, considering that this particular company is a construction industry, so it only means that they need higher level of occupational health personnel, not just first aider. Okay, so for example, this form has been accomplished date March 30. Okay, for example, just in time for the submission of the report. Okay, March 30, 2022, for example. Here, you're going to write down the name of the employer. So sabi natin, the name of our employer is Juan de la Cruz. You have to make sure that it is being signed also. Magsasign dito yung medical personnel or occupational health personnel natin, yung gumawa ng report natin, and of course, the employer. Okay? So that's it, mga ka-OSH. We were able to give you some information on how to accomplish the annual medical report. So I hope nasubmit nyo na yung mga reports nyo, or isasubmit nyo na yung mga reports ninyo. ASAP. Kasi nga doon, based on the Section 17 of the Department Order 198 series of 2018, willful failure on the submission on any of the reports, mandatory reports, pag hindi tayo nakasubmit, I think the penalty for that is 30,000. Okay, so ayaw natin ma-penalize tayo, di ba? Okay, so it's very easy to submit the report. Madali lang po mag-accomplish ng annual medical report. Okay, so with that, thank you so much, and keep safe and better.